little exercise before I get into the presentation. You up for that? Yes? Yes. Okay, so I'm looking for you to just team up with one other person. If we have an off number, then 3 is fine. And I would like for each of you to take your turn and tell the person that you're partnered with something good. It can be anything good. It can be something about your family, it can be something about your professional life, it can be about anything, but just tell your partner one thing that's good. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, so please get with a partner. You can get in 3s if needed, and it's not complicated, you don't have to overthink it, just tell each other something good. For the 3 of you, maybe? So, would someone volunteer and share what your partner shared with you in regards to what is good? It can be anything. Somebody volunteer? Come on, one person. I'm patient, I'm willing to wait. Yes. You going to speak in English?
Yes. In fact, here in the audience, I met one of an old member in my team that I coached. It was a supervisor. She was a supervisor in one of my teams, and now she is telling me that she has been happy work with me, and she learned a lot of things thanks to me, and she is having a good and nice career in another institution, in a bank especially, and the things that she learns with me are useful for her nowadays, today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey. And how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it's satisfaction, and it makes me smile, and yes,
Great.
it's a great.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. One more person? Yes. Who's going to speak?
Yes.
Bonjour, je suis Sohaib Pedri, team leader de Dalux, Altus Séminaire. Donc, je viens de recevoir un compliment de la part de ma directrice, directement, et qui toujours elle est fière de notre boulot, nos résultats ces derniers temps. Et ça me fait vraiment plaisir parce que j'aimerais bien toujours le meilleur, tout simplement.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody have any idea why I wanted to do this exercise before we start this presentation? Yes.
Alors, je pense que le fait de valoriser quelqu'un dans son entourage ou dans son équipe l'aide justement à avoir plus confiance en lui et donc donner le meilleur de lui-même. Donc c'est toujours bien de valoriser les personnes autour de soi et donc avoir, et bien évidemment, apporter le meilleur de soi-même et donner le plus de soi. Voilà, ça nous aide aussi.
Very good. Thank you. So the other reason why I wanted to start this at the beginning of this presentation is because I don't think we do enough of this. I don't think we do enough just as people in general of appreciating each other. I think in general we don't do enough recognizing of our direct reports. I don't think we do enough of recognizing people that don't report to us. And I also wanted you to feel good going into this presentation. So I would encourage you to steal my idea. It actually wasn't my idea, I stole it from someone else. And do this with your own teams. It's a very simple, quick exercise, and it gets people in a good frame of mind for their day. Okay, so like all of my talks, I'm going to start with some foundational things that you need to have in place in order for the things that I'm going to share to really work. Kind of give you some tips on where to start, talk about how you can use meetings to your advantage, talk about the value of having multiple strategies, talk about budget, because believe it or not, that's a big piece of recognition, what you need to stay within compliance, but also do things from a recognition perspective that are really going to impact others. Do your homework, and then we're going to go into some examples. I doubt we're going to have time to do any exercises, but I am going to give you some homework to take with you. And then we'll just go over processes and share our best practices. Okay, some of this probably sounds familiar. My expectation is that you've got some people managing attrition happens because of their experience with the manager. Because really, the manager is the company in most cases to our associates. My expectation is also that you are building relationships with your direct reports. You're having development conversations like we've talked about before. You're having consistent and effective communications with your folks. Abdu mentioned in a previous talk about skip levels. I'm a huge component of having those, so it's not just about a manager having a conversation with their direct report. It's managers having conversations with the frontline associates. It's directors having conversations with supervisors. And it's multiple channels, and it's different ways of doing it. On the people management side, setting expectations and doing the proper coaching, making sure that you're empowering your associates. So I'm going to spend most of my time today talking and really sharing ideas on some things you can try with your teams. And I would encourage you to have a plan around this. It shouldn't just be something random that you do occasional. You should have a plan for individuals on your team, and then the department should also have a plan. And I mean, ideally the whole company, but at least the department and the individuals on your team. Earlier, we talked about the culture of accountability. So my expectation is that's in place, and having senior level support. Okay, so I think I actually mentioned this as a best practice earlier in the conference, but if you're not regularly meeting with your associates to just talk to them and get to know them, then I would strongly suggest that you do that. You can couple that with monitoring, you can couple it with coaching, but I would separate that conversation. Spend time with your associates to get to know them. If you don't spend time to get to know them, then how are you going to know how to motivate them? Abdu mentioned, again, the times are getting a little blurry for me, but at some point in this conference, he talked about that a supervisor, in his mind, one of a supervisor's job is to be a cheerleader, and I agree with him. You're going to get better results if you're able to figure out the individuals on your team and how to motivate your team as a whole. So make sure you're asking questions like I have listed here. I won't read them all, but everybody likes to be recognized differently. Some people like public recognition, some people don't. Some people just want their name up on a wall. So you have to figure out what motivates them. I'll give you an example. I had a boss, and you can even know that your boss is doing this to motivate you, and you can't help in any way to be motivated. And this is an example of that. So when I was on the phones and I was selling, I'm not motivated by money. Most salespeople are. I'm motivated by being the best, and my boss at the time knew it. So he would constantly be like, Lisa, you're really close to that number 2 spot. What's going on? Are you going to let this person beat you? And I knew he was doing it just to, get to me. But it worked, and it worked every single time because he knew what motivated me, and he pushed that button, and he could just push it and push it and push it, and it worked every time because he knew what it was. Now, you may not know right offhand, and if you don't, you can try a couple of things until you figure out what it is. But once you find that piece for each individual, you'll get that person to perform so much better than they would under someone else. And I love the story that you shared. Being in a call center for many years, we would have drafts so that different individuals would report to different supervisors. And I could see, as from a manager, man, this person really performs under this particular supervisor. Sometimes it was a personality thing, but most times they just figured out how to motivate the person. So I would just encourage you. I think most of us, if not all of us, I think all of us in this room, because you're here to better yourself, you want to be the best at what you do, so you have to take the time to figure out how to motivate your employees. And sometimes it's just listening. You may have somebody on your team that's going through a lot at home, and they just need an ear. They just need you to listen. So sometimes that's all it is. So be willing to be what your team needs you to be. And then I shared this when somebody was asking a question. I'm a very task-oriented person, and that doesn't mean that I always remember everything, so it makes me feel better to make a list. A lot of times I make the list just so that I can check the box, but in this case, you're making the list so that you can remember the information that you found out while you were sitting there. And you're doing something else as well, so you may not remember it as well. I'm sure Jared could explain why that is from a human factors perspective, but I'm not going to. Just write it down so that you'll remember it. Okay, so I'm a little cautious in talking about meetings because I do think, generally speaking, at least in the U.S., we have way too many meetings, especially higher up in the company. You know, you're in meeting after meeting. In fact, the one thing I don't miss about my call center days is being in meetings for 12, 16 hours a day. I'm not in that same situation. So I'm not suggesting that you have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. And you have to look at your schedule and make sure that you're balancing all of your other responsibilities. However, as a people manager, your primary job is to take care of your people. So think about ways that you can meet with them that are going to be most effective. Another best practice that I'll throw out there is sometimes you don't even need to be in a meeting. So we actually experimented with, in the sales department, our tenure is a little bit different than on the service side, where on the service side you see a little bit more attrition than what we saw. And we had a group of people that we called the veterans, because they had been there so long. And they really wanted their voice to be heard. So what the manager did at the time is he said, I really want to hear your opinions, I think you bring value, but you're veterans. You don't need a manager in the meeting with you. So he sponsored a lunch for them once a month. They got in a room, and the only thing that he asked them to do was for it not to be negative, and that they came out with 2 or 3 ideas on how to make the department better. And it was a huge success because those people felt like their voice was heard. They got free lunch. And then we got some great ideas from these people who had been around for a while. So try to think outside the box, and don't be afraid to try something, and if it doesn't work, just stop. Again, let's go back to the whole idea of fail fast, recover quick. But sometimes you just have to try it, because not everything is going to work in every environment. So you can try it. Focus groups is another, they can be used in a lot of different situations, but if you're struggling, it could be any type of problem. Maybe you have a problem with negativity on your floor. When I say floor, I mean where your agents are. Have a focus group. Have a conversation, very candid, and just say, hey, we're in a room, you're in the nest. It just means you can say whatever and not get in trouble for it as long as you do it professionally. And you are also offering a solution. So that's kind of my rule. I want you to be frank with me. Give it to me the way it is, but be professional and give me a solution to the problem that you're bringing to me. So use different mediums, figure out what the right frequency the main reason for meetings is to make sure that you're getting the face time with your associates, that they're feeling valued. You can empower them to do some of these things on their own. If you're not comfortable to do a model like the veteran thing that I mentioned, if you've got somebody on your team that wants to be a supervisor someday, and you've given them some additional responsibilities, then let them be in there leading the focus group just to make sure it stays on track. So you can try those different things. All right, multiple strategies. I've kind of alluded to this a couple of times, but you can't expect to write a thank you card, handwrite a thank you card to everybody on your team every day or every week or every month, and expect that to wow every single person on your team. Now, if you do it at the right frequency, which I wouldn't recommend, I probably did it about once a quarter. Use different cards just so that they don't think you're, again, checking something off your list and you're writing something meaningful. But that may not work for everyone. Maybe that works for, I don't know, 25% of your team. They're like, oh, she took the time to actually handwrite a note. When was the last time I got a handwritten note? But for someone else, it's coming by your desk and asking how they're doing. Or maybe you know that they have a sick parent and you're asking how that's going, and if they, how's their schedule working out with what they're dealing with at home. And I know that there are some limits that you have on schedules, but since I'm on that topic, and there may be different schools of thought on this, but my thought on this is there are little things that make a huge difference to people, especially in a call center. So Abdu probably needs to plug his ears on this one because he may not agree with me on it. But if I have a situation where the calendar's full, no one else is supposed to go on vacation, but I've got this extreme circumstance with an employee, they've got something going on, they really need the day, and our service levels, have been trending well, you know what, I'm gonna give that person the day off. As long as I'm doing it fairly, I'm not like taking somebody out of order, but, or if you need to modify their schedule for a day or two. Obviously, you can't do it for an extended period of time when you have to be fair, but generally speaking, if there's something that you can do with someone's schedule or someone's vacation because of this extenuating circumstance, my recommendation is to do it. They're people, and that is something that they're going to remember because you cared about them as a person, they're not just a number. All right, I am also, again, I'm that list person, and I wanted to make sure that I hit every person. So another just best practice, I had, when I was a frontline supervisor, I had 2 lists. I had one, I had all of my list of employees, and if you can remember to do this without doing a list, more power to you. I think you're great. But for me, I had to do a list. So every week, I would pick 2 agents to recognize that week, and 2 agents, and they would be different agents, obviously, that I would challenge. So the recognition could be anything, and I'm going to give you some ideas on recognition, so I won't go through some examples now. But the challenge would be something like, Jarrett, your sales goal is 40 items this week. This individual is your competition this week. So if I'm going to give you a 2-pronged challenge. If you write 45 items this week, I'm going to give you X. If you beat this person this week, I'm going to give you Y. Those kind of things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary thing that I'm giving them. It can just be it just depends on the situation. And then I would do that every week, and I would track it. Okay, I've done Sally and Joe this week for recognition, and my team never knew that that was my method. They just knew that I recognized and gave challenges to my team on a regular basis. So if you can't do it on your own and just think, okay, well, I haven't done this for this person in a while, then I would suggest doing some type of tracking. Again, they won't know you're tracking. Don't tell them you're tracking. But it will help you stay organized and make you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. The other thing that is huge, huge, huge is timeliness. So I'll use the example that I just had with Jarrett. If I told Jarrett, I gave him that challenge, and then I didn't come to him the next week after we got the results. I said nothing. I didn't come back to him and say, hey, great job, you got 45, or great job, you beat him. Then the whole thing was worthless. So timeliness of getting back to your associates, whether it's a contest, whatever it is critical in recognition. And I know sometimes it's difficult, but you have to make it a priority or there's no point in even doing it because it's going to lose all its value. Obviously, documentation, all of this is in your handbooks that we talked about earlier. I didn't really go into contests and things in that much detail during the earlier presentation, so I'll try to touch on that a little bit. All right, recognition at multiple levels. Clearly, the direct report relationship should have the most interaction, meaning if I have a team of 15 people, those are the people that I'm recognizing the most. But if I'm the supervisor and Abdu's the manager, and Ben is the director, all of them should be recognizing all of the people underneath them as well as the people on the front line. Now, it's not going to be as frequent, it may not be in the same way, but just as Abdu said, trying to remember names, which is also something that I agree with and did when I was in the call centers. I was much better at memorizing then. But even just remembering somebody's name makes a big difference. But if Abdu then, when he was walking the floor as the manager, came up to Jared and said, hey, I heard you beat so-and-so in this challenge that Lisa gave you. Great job. I mean, just that in and of itself makes a big difference. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something tangible. It can just be a word of encouragement. And Jared will be like, how did you even know? You know, so it makes a big impact. All right. Budget. So sometimes a pain point for call centers. So anytime that you need money in a call center, I highly recommend that you put a business plan together with an ROI. Because it's really hard for your manager to say no when you can prove in numbers that it's gonna get you more in performance. So if it's not already in place and you have to put that business case together, make sure that you've got the numbers to back up what you're asking for. And if you don't, then just ask for a trial. Just say, hey, I want to try this. I will measure the results. If it works, will you be open to giving me this budget? If it doesn't, then I will try something else. But you really need to put a budget, a detailed budget together. And every year, hopefully more frequently than that, but at least every year it should go up. And every level of management should have their own budget. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. Why do you think that is? It's all about empowerment. So there should be some standard things I mentioned in department-wide, but a supervisor should have some freedom. A manager should have some freedom to recognize their folks the way that they feel is going to be the most impactful. If they don't have their own budget, it's difficult to do that. Tracking is really important when it comes to things that you're buying, contests, things like that. So you need to make sure that everything that you want to do is documented in that compliance handbook. And a lot of times it's also documented in the employee and the manager handbook as well. You want to make sure, I can tell you that we've gotten in trouble in the past in the US for not tracking gift cards correctly, for example. There are certain guidelines that we weren't aware of. And we weren't able to have them for a really long time because of it. So just make sure that you understand what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and that's all documented, and that you have the budget that aligns with what you want to do. So, for example, maybe you want to break it out as, I would like to have $50 per agent per month for my supervisor's personal budget. And then the manager has $100 per. And remember, the managers would be over the supervisors, so they have less people. So it'd be more money, but less people. And so on and so forth. And then the department has a budget as well. Kind of touched on this already, but just make sure you're looking at industry regulations internally. I can tell you a lot of times in bigger organization, half of the organization over here might be aware of a regulation, but you're not aware, so make sure you're doing your due diligence on understanding what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And then the reporting and tracking that I've already discussed. Okay, homework. Again, I would really encourage you not just to do something off the cuff. When you remember it, I would encourage you to put a plan together. And in order for your plan to be effective, you got to do research. So, what are people doing in your industry regarding recognition? What are some recognition platforms out there? Maybe your company doesn't have one at all, and you'd like to have one brought in. Again, you've got to have a business plan and an ROI tied to that. Some of it is just asking. Ask your people what they like and what they don't like, what their previous supervisors have done in the past that they liked and they didn't like. Ask people in other departments what's working for them and their associates. And it should be regular. It should be part of your standard employee engagement survey, but you should be asking that on a regular basis. Something that I always ask in my monthly meetings is, do you have the tools that you need? Do you need anything? I know that doesn't sound like the typical recognition, but it makes the person feel like you care about them. So I'm putting kind of employee engagement recognition kind of together in this presentation. I hope you guys will allow me to do that. And I mentioned this before, it's a constant review. You can't keep doing the same things over and over unless they're working. But adding new things and trying new things, I think, will only make it better. And analyzing it, I mean not just annually. I think it should be done at least annually, but it'd be ideal to review it quarterly to keep it fresh. Okay, so I have a lot of different examples in here. I'm hoping that maybe a couple of these will resonate with you or maybe you haven't thought about. If you can see the image there, that's just a recognition platform. Do you guys have, is anyone using a recognition platform? Anybody know what I'm talking about? No. So there are several, there's many of these, but typically what these systems do for you is give you a point system. So you found somebody doing something right, so we'll talk about using the points first. So you walk by one of your associates and they are just wowing this customer. You can give them points, and I'll tell you what those points mean in a minute. You might get a compliment from a customer. Maybe they're far exceeding their results compared to everyone else. They've hit a challenge. You can use points for challenge. They went above and beyond without you even asking. It really can be for anything. They've mentored a new hire. They went into the new hire class and did some training. You asked them to do a special project. You really can use points for anything, but basically going back to that budget, you would have a budget based on your level, and you have so many points to give out in a given time frame. Usually it's a month. And you can give them out any way you want. Now, as an organization, your organization may decide to put some parameters around it. My personal opinion is the supervisor should have a budget, the manager should have a budget, as long as they're meeting the compliance guidelines, and they should be able to use the points the way that they want. Some of these platforms actually can give you a physical card that's worth points, and they just go into the system and log them in. What those are great for, that I love them for, is if Abdu's the senior VP of your organization, he has some in his pocket, and as he's walking around, he hears somebody doing a really good call, or he's talked to the manager beforehand, and they've given him some people that he should recognize based on some type of performance. So instead of him just saying, hey, I'm going to give you 50 points, he hands them a card, and it just resonates a little bit more. The supervisor can do the same thing. It's just if you start giving out a lot of cards, then it doesn't make it as special. So some platforms offer that, some don't. So anyway, the points eventually equate to dollars, and the associates can go in here and order things. So anything from, there's basically anything you can think of. A purse, a trip, a bike, anything. They pretty much can go in. So a lot of times, they'll save up their points because they want to buy something big. So it really motivates people both on the service and the sales side. So that's something to think about. It's a web interface, right, Janvier? Use the right words. They can also be used for just peer recognition. So I could go in and say, Ben helped me so much today. He helped me answer this question for this really difficult customer, and I just wanted everybody to know that he's a great team player. And you can type that, and then everybody can see it while they're on the recognition platform. Or you can do it as a supervisor, or a manager, or a senior level. So there's different things that you can do within a recognition platform. All right, miscellaneous. I love my Hall of Fame or Wall of Fame, and you can basically do anything you want. If you want to recognize first call resolution, or if you want to recognize customer compliments, or you want to recognize the highest closing ratio on the sales side, the best HT, whatever metric you want to drive. And this is, if you guys can see the pictures, it's basically just an example of where you're doing that. In a previous role, we had a Hall of Fame, and on one side, we had the top salespeople, and it had their picture, and we had their picture professionally done. And on the other side, I don't remember what the recognition was, but it was filled with other types of recognition. And pretty much every time you walked in and out of the sales department, you were walking by those pictures. It was extremely motivating to the people that were on the wall, but also to the people that wanted to be on the wall. So something just to think about, and it doesn't have to be fancy, but it's a way to recognize people. And again, this is going to work for some people and motivate them. For others, they're going to be like, please don't put my picture up there. And then we've talked about it can just be public recognition. It can be private recognition verbally. It can just be a certificate. I can tell you that I have a stack. I don't know, stack probably that high. We put them in these plastic coverings, but all the certificates that I got while I was on the phones, I still have them. And we had medals, like with the little, sorry, I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, but like with the ribbon, for different things. Stand-up boards. I don't know if I have a picture of this. So ideally, you want to have some kind of board for your team where you're tracking results. And on that board, you can recognize, okay, who is the best performer from the previous day, previous week, whatever makes the most sense for your organization. Typical stuff in the U.S. is trophy and food. Do you guys feed your people in call centers here in Algeria? Is that a thing here? Yes? No? So food's a big thing in call centers in the U.S. I mean, big. We're constantly feeding, probably too much, as a recognition. So we hit service level, we recovered, or whatever the case may be. We bring in breakfast, or we bring in lunch. Another thing that we used to do is we had certain criteria for a quarter, and the winners of those criteria, so it could be like the top closing ratio, the top salesperson, the person with the most customer compliments, whatever it was for the quarter. And then we actually took the associates off-site to a really nice restaurant, and then to a team building activity. You can have theme days, so we did all different kinds, like Hawaiian and taco, like a Mexican theme, and we have like Mexican food. It just breaks up the monotony that you fall into in a call center, and it's fun. You want to have this fun, engaging environment. I don't know what dress code you have that you require in the call centers, but those are things that changed a lot depending on the leader in our call center. So at one point we were business casual. So we would have days where we would just be casual. They could wear jeans, which was a big deal. So you're gonna have to modify that to what would work, what would modify your team. And maybe dress isn't something that that they would be motivated by, but it is in the US. Now this is the one that maybe you haven't heard of, that we did in the past. So I'm of the opinion that when you're employing someone, you're really, their whole family is part of who you're responsible for. So if I've got a top performer who's putting in the time, is working overtime when I need them, basically does whatever I ask, then they're sacrificing time with their family a lot of the time. So Jared's my #1 person. You know, I might send his wife flowers or send her something that she would like based on what I've learned. And write her a note and say, hey, I just want to let you know that I appreciate the sacrifice that you're making by allowing your, you know, being patient with your whatever. So think of things like that. You can also have activities that include the family. So maybe we typically would have a picnic every year. So you probably want to have some team building that is just the team, so the team can bond. But having that family and friends all together, that really helps your team come together. Okay, so I had an exercise, but we're going to skip that. All right, so how am I doing on time? All right, so to review the process. Okay. So you want to spend the time to build relationships. I feel like we've talked about that a lot. I think you probably got that one. But building a relationship takes time, and it's not just a one-time thing where you're sitting 2 hours by your person, and then after that it's just the bare minimum. It's a constant touching that person and building a relationship. It takes time. Make sure that you're really good at communicating everything. I always held myself personally accountable. If somebody had to come and ask me a question about something that I had communicated, then I needed to look at myself. What could I have done differently to communicate this better? This is something that they should have known. And I have always led that way, is if something breaks, something went wrong, I should be looking at myself first before I point the finger at someone else, because I probably could have done something better. Research what you think is going to work best for your organization. Again, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Make sure that you have everything in place before you launch. So my last presentation, I talked about a website that was enhanced to do quoting, but it really wasn't ready. And then it ended up made things worse from a customer perspective than better. So don't roll out a recognition plan where you don't have compliance approval, therefore you can't give the prize away. Or don't roll out a contest where you don't have accurate reporting, because you might end up giving the wrong person the recognition, and then that's going to build a huge amount of strife among your team. So just make sure you have everything in place before you roll it out. After you execute, make sure it works, because not everything you do is going to work. So make sure you're spending time on activities that are driving employee engagement, improving results, etc. And the only thing I don't think I mentioned was just there is going to take a little bit of your time to analyze the results on if they did actually work or not. Because sometimes you're not going to see right away an immediate improvement. Or I might not be able to read a certain employee. Maybe they were really happy about whatever I did for them, but you can't see it on their face. But then over the next week or two, you just see that their attitude's better, they're more engaged in the team. So understand that not everything is instant, and you really need to analyze the results over time. Okay, I'm not going to go over all of these because some of these are repeated in others, but generally speaking, please give your management team continuous training. It will just help them become better and better. Focus on change management, inclusion of your people, empowering of your people, and the communication piece. Do different things. Constantly do different things. Doesn't mean You can't keep doing these things over here that are working, but constantly try different things and ask people for their ideas. And I will just reiterate the timely follow-up. Don't do it if you can't follow up. You might as well have not done it at all. In most cases, you're going to make it worse. So your plan shouldn't have 100 things that you're going to do around recognition, because you're not going to do it. So make sure that it makes sense, that you're going to be able to follow through on all of these items, both from an individual perspective and your team perspective. Okay. Questions? Are you going to speak in French or English?
English.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for your...
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the CEO. I mean, it's not every day that we are happy or as manager, because sometimes I'm upset because I don't know, I don't like the weather or something like that, and this will impact my decisions about my team. So for me, I can be every day in Disneyland. Sometimes I'm sad, and I can't be. I can't. Or I want to talk to anyone. So how can I manage myself to be and give a good mood to other members of the team? This is my question.
I'm not sure if you're going to like my answer.
I know.
I know what you're going to say.
So I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. It's a learned behavior, and if you're in a management position, you've got to leave everything at the door. So you just got in a fight with your wife. It's raining. You got in an accident on the way to work. Generally speaking, you're going to have to learn how to leave that at the door. Now, I understand in some circumstances that's easy for me to say. It's a lot harder to do, and I'll give you that. But that's your main job, is you set the tone for your team. So if you come in and you're grumpy, you're role modeling grumpy behavior. So you're going to have to learn how to leave it at the door. Now that being said, if something happens, did you want to add something?
No.
Oh, okay. That being said, if you just can't, like, for whatever reason, and that should be the exception, just say that is the exception, then you may want to choose to monitor outside of your team for part of the day until you can get it together. Do something where you're not in front of them. Now, obviously, that can't be a regular thing, but if I had a supervisor come to me and just say, you know, I'm having a really rough day, I just need an hour or two to get it together.
So, it's working? Oh, it's working? Sorry. It's working? Okay. I can project, you can hear me, right? So there is this thing called emotional intelligence. I don't know if you heard of it. So there is intellectual intelligence, IQ, you know, how intelligent they are. And there is this, it's a new field that's actually not as new, but it's been used recently a lot. It's called emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So how intelligent are you emotionally? So what you were talking about, you're upset, and you have to be an actor, truly. So it's kind of, the field is from here to here, and you have to learn to play in the whole. And I mean, we can do a seminar on that one day. It's a really good field for supervisors and managers, because, sorry, if you chose to be a manager, you chose to be a leader, sorry. Yeah. No, I mean, really, I'm just, yeah.
It is something you can learn to do, though.
Yes, yeah, it's a learn.
Yeah, it is absolutely something you can learn to do. And a lot of,
Yes.
it's not uncommon, it's very common. So it's definitely something you can learn how to
It's a
control.
learned behavior. It's a learned behavior. How do you think politicians? I mean, they have high emotional intelligence, right? Because they know how to talk to a common person, and they know how to be in a, you know, C-suite position, and you can play from, you know, the worker, l'ouvrier, jusqu'au président.
There's an exception.
Trump. There's an exception. All right, sorry.
Thank you, no, great, thank you. Thanks for asking the question. Any other questions?